the shadows, bound for the gallows, a dead man walking, till love came calling. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. 6 feet under, I thought it was over, and answered a prayer, the voice of a savior. Rise up, rise up, rise up, rise up. Only at once I came alive. This beating heart, these open eyes, the grave let go, the darkness should have known. You're still rolling strong. You're still rolling, rolling on. You're still rolling strong.
Well, welcome. Really glad that you are choosing to hang out with us today. If this is your very first time, my name is Joel. I am one of the pastors here at the church. And I really appreciate the technology, the ways in which we can connect online, wherever you're hanging out and me being here in one of the rooms at the church. But as I was thinking about it, I thought, what's a way that we can take it a step even further, a way that we can continue to connect even more? Sure, you can check us out on social media, on Facebook or on Instagram. You can jump on our website where you can actually sign up for eBlast, which is a great next step, a chance for you to hear more about what we are doing as a church. But how do we make it even more relational? Let me suggest 2 things. Number 1 is if you're watching with people, maybe take some time after listening and watching to just talk about what was discussed. What does this mean to you? What does it look like in your life? You know, when we're in person, we're trying to get more conversation amongst us as well. And it's just been amazing to see and to hear the buzz that is happening. And so maybe you want to do that at your home. Now, if you're not watching with anybody, maybe you want to invite someone. Maybe they watch in their place and you watch in yours, and then you hook up and have a phone call or jump on Zoom, or you show up for coffee. Just talk a little bit about it. Because what I find is when we're just simply hearing, that's one thing, but when we start to actively contribute, it begins to take these life-changing conversations to a whole other level. So start talking about it with others. Second thing is reach out and connect with us. I would love to hear from you. Where are you watching? How long you've been watching? Why you started watching? And maybe this can create a conversation between the two of us. I'd be happy to jump on a Zoom call, or if you're in the Paris area and you want to grab a coffee, would love to do that as well. Just simply reach out and send me an email. But our hope is that not only do we connect, but we make this even more relational. And so would you consider doing one of those 2 things? Well, it's great that you are watching with us here today. We're going to have some music and then the teaching. And my hope is that this time is a chance for you to experience more of what Jesus wants for you in the midst of all of life. Thanks for jumping on with us. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
I believe in the blood of Jesus that washes white as snow. I believe in the power of the gospel still makes the broken whole. I believe that the curse of sin is broken. to every generation. Look at what the Lord has done. Sing it to the darkness, that the light has come. Sing it to the nations. Look at what the Lord has done. Sing it to the daughter. Sing it to the son. To every generation. Look at what the Lord has done. Sing it to the darkness, that the light has come. Sing it to the nation. Look at what the Lord has done. Look at what the Lord has done. As I bow before you, Lord, I will rise in confidence. I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. And no matter where I go, and no matter where I've been, I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. As I bow before you, Lord, I will rise in confidence. I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in. And no matter where I go, and no matter where I've been, I will see your goodness, Lord, in the land I'm living in.
Today, I want to look at the question of what does Jesus want from you? I mean, have you ever sat there and thought about it? You just kind of go through the motions? And maybe it's a question you've been wrestling with. Like, what exactly does Jesus want? Do you have to figure it out on your own? Is it by reading the Bible and following all the rules? Is it by listening to what other people tell you? Is it about following your heart and just following love? Like what is it that Jesus wants? Well, that's the question we're going to look at here today. It's a question that falls into a series that we began a couple of weeks ago, looking at the person of Jesus. We've been following along the Gospel of Mark. Now, the Gospel of Mark is basically the teaching and the preaching of the Apostle Peter that was compiled by a colleague, a friend, Mark. And it's by walking through this as we get closer and closer to Easter that we're going to start to reveal and come back to three critical questions that the Gospel of Mark deals with, but that we need to deal with in our own lives as well. First one is, who is Jesus? What is his purpose? And then what is our response? And today we're going to focus more in on that question of what is our response to Jesus? Like, what exactly does Jesus want for you and for me? If you're joining us for this series, I'm really encouraging, asking, strongly suggesting for us to do three things. The first one is to join us every week. That whether it's online, whether it's in person, just a chance for us to continue to learn and grow together, as I'm often going to be building upon things that we've talked about from previous weeks. The second thing is to consider, strongly suggest, reading the Gospel of Mark, not just kind of picking passages or certain verses, but to read the entirety. 16 chapters, takes about an hour and a half, 2 hours to read. From now until Easter, maybe read it through a couple of times so you get a fuller picture of who Jesus is. And then the third one is this: would you make it personal? Because I think where transformation begins to happen is when we begin to look at Jesus, not just simply as a figure to study, but as the one we want to live life with. And that only begins by making it personal. So this week, we want to come back to that question of, okay, well then, what is it that Jesus wants? And if I was to summarize it in 2 words, it's actually the words of Jesus. It sounds so simple, but it's incredibly profound. It's this: follow me. Follow me. As you start to read the Gospel of Mark, you realize that the invitation that Jesus gives to people is follow me. That ultimately that is the beginning place of what Jesus wants for you and for me. And for some of you, you've taken that step. For others, maybe you're still on the outside kind of looking in. And so this is going to be a conversation that I believe is going to be helpful and beneficial, regardless of where you are on the spectrum of faith, whether you have been following Jesus for a long time or not at all, or you're still not even really sure what exactly does that mean. So today, we're going to turn to Mark chapter 3. And I'll give you a bit of a background. Jesus' ministry is beginning to grow. People are starting to know who he is because of his miracles, because of his teaching, but not everyone is as impressed. There's a group, a religious group called the Pharisees that we're going to talk a little bit more about in a moment that are not pleased with Jesus. You see, it seems that Jesus to them is breaking all the rules. We saw this last week when he talked about the ability to forgive sins. Like, how dare he say such a thing? The Pharisees run into conflict with Jesus because he is beginning to see his disciples pick wheat on the Sabbath, which may seem odd to you and me. They're upset at Jesus because of who he hangs out with. Not the honorable, but in their eyes, the dishonorable, tax collectors and sinners. And the list can go on and on. And so we're landing at a place where there is a growing tension between Jesus and the Pharisees, the religious leaders. And it's in this story that we're going to begin to understand what is it that Jesus wants for you and for me. And so let's jump in and read Mark chapter 3. I'm going to read it. I'm going to kind of unpack it a little bit so we understand the context, and then come back to this question of what is my response? What does this mean for me here today? So Mark chapter 3, this is what we read. It says, Jesus went in the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath? Or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save life or to destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he said to the man, "Hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. Let's be honest. If you're reading this from the outside looking in, you are like, what the heck is going on? I mean, these religious leaders are seeing if Jesus is going to work on the Sabbath. Like, what is the big deal? Why can't Jesus heal on the Sabbath? And then after he does heal them, they show their disgust by planning to plot his death with the supporters of Herod. Both seem rather extreme. But it's in this encounter that we begin to see what is it that Jesus wants. So who exactly are these Pharisees? I mean, it seems that Jesus is at loggerheads with them all the time, that there is this growing tension. And we saw this last week if you were with us. They were the ones who were disgusted by the fact that Jesus would even attempt to say that he could forgive people's sins. So the Pharisees were a religious group that started within Judaism about 100 years before Jesus came on the scene. And the Pharisees, religious leaders, were essentially individuals who felt that Judaism was actually getting away from following in the ways of God. That there was an incredible holiness movement within them, that they wanted to see application in their life, that they didn't want to simply just believe in God, but that their belief would shape their behavior. And so one of the things they did was they developed what they called the tradition of the elders. And you may see that phrase come up from time to time in the Bible. And the tradition of the elders is essentially additional laws that they tacked on to the commands and the laws of God to help them understand and interpret them better. So, for example, the commandment of God, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. This was given to us as one of the 10 commandments where God worked for 6 days and then he rested on the seventh. And so God is like, listen, I want to set apart the seventh day. I want the Sabbath to be a day of rest, to be a day set aside for me. I don't want any work done. You can work all the other days, but on this day, don't work. And so the Pharisees are like, well, what exactly constitute work? So they came up with 39 different categories around types of work. And guess what? One of them was in terms of medical related help work. So they decided that if it was life threatening, that you could work medically on the Sabbath. And so, for example, childbirth, that could happen. Or if you had a severe infection and it looked like you were going to die, you could help them. You could work. Or if, like, I don't know, like say a wall fell on you, then you could work and you could help save the person. But a man with a shriveled hand, sorry, not on the Sabbath. Come back the next day. And Jesus saw this and he looked at them and he's like, what is the Sabbath all about? To do good or to do evil? And Jesus gets incredibly annoyed. We're actually told that he's angry because nobody is saying anything. And so he heals the man. He restores the man. And it's here that the Pharisees don't see the error of their ways. Rather, they can't believe that Jesus would have done such a thing. And they begin to plan and to plot how they would kill him. I mean, it seems like such a disconnect. Like, you read through the Bible and you think, like, why are the Pharisees so against Jesus? I mean, if they were the ones who were wanting to be closest to God, then why did they miss Jesus? Why did they fail to understand who Jesus was, what his purpose was, and what it means for them? What you begin to see in the Pharisees is something that perhaps started with good intentions, took hold of their lives, in an effort to help them understand how to better live the ways of God in practical ways. It was no longer about following God. It was all about following the rules. You see, what the Pharisees missed was that Jesus desired most. And that is not about following the rules, but rather following him. Beginning to land in a place where you have a relationship with him. And this is what it comes back to. That so often, I think for us, the Pharisees begin to paint a picture for us that one of the things that God does not desire, what Jesus does not want, is that we just simply follow ritualistic religion. A belief that says, if I perform, if I obey, then I'm accepted. And what begins to happen is we start to look at the rules as the means of measuring ourselves in terms of how good we are doing, but also comparing ourselves to see how good or bad others are doing. And then the Pharisees, we see this over and over again, got so caught up in just following the rules, following the laws, that they completely missed Jesus. You see, Jesus came because in the Old Testament we had the laws, we had the commandments, and they weren't cutting it. That's not the way that ultimately we enter in a relationship with God. We need to be with Jesus. I think in many ways, simply following the rules is about what is the lowest common denominator that I need to do to still be approved by you. I mean, take a step back. To take a step back and think of any relationship that you have. Maybe it's with your spouse, it's with your kids, it's with your family, it's with your friends. Imagine if you said, hey, listen. Can you just tell me, what are the important rules? What are the rules that I have to follow? And then I'll just follow the rules and that's where we'll end it. Like, imagine writing that into your marriage vows. Like, just tell me the rules and I'll follow the rules. Like, where's the love? Where's the relationship? And why Jesus became so frustrated with the Pharisees, particularly in this moment, is because they missed it. They missed the spirit of the law, that the law was meant to create a parameter for us to be in a relationship with God, not to be the box we tick to say whether or not we're in or someone else is out. Maybe for some of you watching today, you've been burned by this type of behavior, that you feel a little bit like the man who came looking for mercy in Jesus and instead found the legalism of the Pharisees. And for that, I'm sorry. I mean, as we start to see who Jesus is, what Jesus' purpose is, it wasn't to reform religion. It was actually to abolish religion, to get rid of this ritualistic following of rules and enter into relationship. So why when Jesus saw someone interested in him, his invitation was not, go follow the rules. It was, come and follow me. Now, maybe some of you are nodding your head and be like, yes, yes, I know some legalistic people and they're just a real pain and I'm not like that. Let's just slow down for a moment, because there's a flip side. That sometimes when we think of, I'm not going to follow the rules, it's like, do we just then forget the rules? Like, what does it mean to follow Jesus? Is he saying don't follow the rules or do follow the rules? Because if we step out of Mark for a second into Matthew, and I apologize for jumping out of Mark, but in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, Jesus says this that kind of complicates things. He says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. You see, following Jesus is not as easy as just saying, don't follow the rules, you can forget the rules, because there's an equally problematic danger spot, is that we just become relativistic. We say, I'm not going to follow the rules, I'm going to follow love. I'm going to do what feels right for me. Ever notice that Jesus didn't say, just follow love, just follow your heart? No. He said, come and follow me. And one of the problems with forgetting the law is that we fail to follow Jesus. We just think suddenly it's all about emotion. It's all about how it makes me feel. And I love that part about Jesus when he says, love others as you love yourself, like some version of the golden rule, and we can all get along with that. But some of that other stuff that Jesus says, no. I'm not gonna land on that. It just doesn't feel right for me. So what is it? Like what does Jesus want? Like, forget the law? Follow the law? Let me suggest this. What if we started to look at the rules and the law in a different light? Not as a burden, but as a gift. Because you know what the Pharisees and the legalists and the fundamentalists all have in common with the relativists, those who just say, follow your heart, do what's good, do what's loving, is rules are a burden to both. For the legalists, rules are a burden. It's not I want to, it's I have to. There is no joy for them in following the law. It's a measuring stick. The forget the law people, it's a burden as well. So they just don't do it. They just want to do whatever they want. But neither is what Jesus wants for us. What if you began to see the law as a gift? As a means of us understanding what a relationship with Jesus truly looks like. That we don't follow the law or the rules to be right with God, but rather because of Jesus, we are accepted. And therefore my life is a response. And these laws and these rules begin to help us understand what Jesus wants for us. Remember, Jesus says, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill them. So think of this very issue, healing on the Sabbath. The commandment was this: remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Don't do any work. You can look at it as a burden and be like, okay, well, I can't do this, I can't do that. But understand the spirit of this commandment, that this is a gift from God, saying, listen, I want you to rest. I want you to recover. I want you to be with me. And so when we think about it in our context, Sundays, a day of rest. It's a chance to be together in community. It's a chance to hang out, and we're not to sit there and fret over, well, should I be doing this or should I not be doing that? Ask yourself the question, is how are you spending your time? Is it restful? Is it honoring to God? Because that's what it begins to look like to follow Jesus. And if this is just one instance, what if we start to read the Bible from a whole new lens of following Jesus in a way that the laws and the commandments are not a burden, but rather a gift to help us understand and open up the door to what this abundant life with Jesus really begins to look like. You know, the statement of Jesus that really kind of penetrates my soul is when Jesus looked at them with sadness because of the stubbornness of their heart. It's stubbornness, it's pride that will prevent us from truly following Jesus. because we'll just make it all about the law or not at all about Jesus. And both miss the mark. What does Jesus want from you? He wants you to follow him. Simple, yet profound. What does that look like? Here's a great opportunity. You can take today, you can take this coming week to begin to work out what does it look like to follow Jesus, to not become legalistic, but to also not to become so relativistic that we just do whatever we want. Rather, we say, Jesus, what is the Spirit in the midst of this? Where are you leading me? How can I live in a way that honors you by honoring others? I'm cheering for you this week. I know in my life there's going to be opportunities where I'm going to want to get legalistic or I'm just going to want to forget it altogether. And in those moments, I want to turn my focus back to Jesus. I hope you will too. What does Jesus want from you? What does Jesus want for you? To follow him, because he is the way that leads to life. I'm going to pray for us in a moment, but I just want to say, hey, next week we're going to jump into this again and look at what does it look like to follow Jesus in the midst of the storms and the difficulties of life. I really, really hope you'll join us and maybe take some time this week to begin reading through the Gospel of Mark. Let me pray. Lord God, I thank you for this day. And I just pray that maybe for some of us, we need to repent of some of our legalistic, simply following of the rules. For others, maybe we've just tried to do life on our own for too long. And in both instances, God, we've failed to follow Jesus. So help us today. Do not allow the stubbornness, the hardness of our heart to prevent us from living in a way that truly honors you. May your Spirit fill us. May you guide us and direct us in everything. For we ask this, Jesus, in your name. Amen.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where